Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Uplink Vanguard podcast. I'm joined today. I was actually very surprised that I managed to get that all in one go because I thought I was going to trip up on my words. Uplink Vanguard
You surprised
podcast.
even yourself?
I got it.
Yeah.
It wasn't Nesquik. It was good.
No, not the Nexus trick. Not again.
I am joined today by my amazing colleagues. Shall we start at the end with CCP Collins?
Yeah, I'm Scott. I'm CCP Collins, and I am the game director.
Hello, I am Ben, aka CCP of Apex, and I'm the art director.
Hi, I'm Massey. I'm a combat designer.
And I am CCP Peaceful, the community developer. Joined today, you all kind of work on combat, right? Like weapons and combat. Mm-hmm. This is a pretty exciting one because for a long time, the community's been always kind of wanting more weapons, I guess, in a way, because we do still currently have one weapon, right? And we're actually only ever going to have one weapon. Is that right? So,
why would you want more?
Yeah.
Trying to carry two at once? Why?
Well, I think maybe we could talk about like the adaptive weaponry then, right? So I think it's obvious to everyone that we are actually going to be making more weapons. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the people sat next to us.
You cannot like that because I don't mind us people asking this because it shows a fuel for people wanting to see this in the game. But some people do ask us like, "Hey, are you going to have more than one weapon?" Like we haven't considered having more than one weapon. We would definitely have more weapons in the game. I think the approach we wanted to take, and I think this is going to be a very elegant segue back into adaptive weaponry, which is we wanted to tackle the weapon systems first before we tackled more weapons. Adding more weapons whilst we were developing or still have underdeveloped kind of systems around our weaponry just adds, a factor of N to everything that we're trying to do. So we knew we wanted to add depth to the system before we added more weapons. Like we are building our weapons tall and not wide. Don't want to go and create 100 different weapons and that's it. And that's how we want the weapon meta to exist in the game is we're building a smaller subset of weapons that are far more customizable. But before we create the different weapons that you can go and customize, we had to go build the systems. We had to build adaptive weaponry. We had to go build manufacturing. Now that those things are in place and we have like a confident meta of how people can acquire and customize their weapons in a way that we're happy with, we can then go, right, now we can go make weapon 2 and weapon 3 and weapon 4. So that's kind of the approach behind it as to why we've only had one weapon so long.
And there's still a lot of depth for us to explore with the adaptive weaponry system as well. Like that's still kind of in its early stages. And we've had a lot of talks internally about where we want to take that system moving forward. And I think to your point, it's like we want to build weapons that are impactful in themselves. We don't want to have people shifting from rifle to similar rifle to other similar rifle. We want to build a really good weapon in the first place and then find the ways that we want to be able to adapt it and give people the control be able to shift it the way that they want without having to completely throw the baby out with the bathwater and then get a new one. So we'll have improvements to the adaptive weaponry system, coming, and hopefully we'll be able to start showing people the more weapons moving forward.
Yeah, and it's almost. I think it was good for us, but it's almost a shame that the one weapon we have in the game is the most basic weapon. Like I think. I'm going to let Ben talk about his disdain for the Core 80.
I'm going to throw me under the bus with the Core 80.
But the Core 80 like really served a purpose for us in that I think when we first really started out ramping up the weapon combat in our game, it was very clear we needed something that was slightly vanilla, that we could just build the combat around. And for that, it was basically we needed our AR-15. We needed a very simple semi-automatic rifle that we could kind of build our combat around, prove that we can make good combat, and then build systems on top of it.
Yeah, and it helped us to build the adaptive weaponry system by starting with something that was kind of anonymous, I guess, because we were going, okay, what levers do we end up building to be able to push the weapon one way or the other, and then go, how engaging is it to do that? Like being able to take the Core 80 as a normal assault rifle and push it towards an SMG was going, okay, how cool is it? Once you get it that far, if you push it all the way to that end, how cool is it? And the same with the other direction towards like the DMR stuff. And we're kind of looking at it and going, it's okay. You can kind of push them one way or the other and you can kind of move them into the different archetypes. But we're going, the weapon design in the first place, like if it was more interesting and if we were doing things that were specific, we can start to see how the adaptive weaponry system would add that value. But we know that like the Core 80 is kind of in a place where it's like vanilla first-person shooter gun, and we've done some internal tests with some other things that are a bit more, New Eden-like.
Yeah, a bit more sci-fi.
Yeah, and going, okay, now we can start to see that when we layer this system on top of this, that you go, okay, I have a really cool base weapon, and what if I can do that, and what if I can do this? And it's like, well, I'm really excited for us to get to the point where we can start showing people some of that stuff, because it does go one step beyond what we've done with the Core 80. But we were only able to see that and build a lot of these systems by starting with something that was super familiar to everybody. Like everyone knows how an assault rifle works. Everyone knows how you're expected to customize an assault rifle. So starting from that point, from development, it was like, cool, we can give ourselves a bunch of the toys and the tools without having to align around something that's a bit more sci-fi and a bit more kind of pointed, and go, cool, this is the like litmus test for how this system works without these extra cool variables on top that might be hiding some weaknesses in the system elsewhere.
I completely agree with you. I just, as you were talking then about the Core 80, you're saying like gun 1, 2, 3, 4. I was thinking, oh, it's Core 81, 82, 83, but it's not.
No, we're going backwards. No, we're going backwards. We've perfected it with the Core 80. It's the Core 79, the Core 78.
Oh God.
But like, I think like, because the Core 80 itself, it isn't very sci-fi. Like, I think that what we're going to next is more sci-fi. That is, I love that we're using references. A lot of the references that we're talking about, some of the new weapons, is we're not talking about, hey, this gun in COD or hey, this gun in real life. We're talking about Halo a lot, which I love right now because I love Halo. And I think we're talking about that. Even Unreal Tournament came up the other day. Like the flak cannon in Unreal Tournament is like one of my favorite weapons of all time. It's absolutely brilliant. And it's just really exciting for us that we're not looking at like hyper military stuff. We're looking at stuff that's very sci-fi and generally very fun, like archetypes of weapons in game. They're just fun to use. They have their own little quirks, and how we can kind of extract some of that into what is still a very serious game for us. Feels grounded still, but has that kind of spice.
Well, I think we were seeing it when we were like looking at references for just like, throwing out random ideas. And it was like all of the coolest stuff that was coming up was things from games in the late 90s and the early 2000s. Like there was clearly like less established ideas about like what a weapon had to be and how weapons had to work, and things were much more novel. And it's nice to be able to go, well, we can take all of the lessons about how people expect to be able to customize weapons in the kind of, 2020s and beyond, and say, well, what if you were to do that with the kind of more unfiltered sci-fi weapon designs from stuff like, the Halo series, which started in 2000 or whatever it was, and games like Unreal Tournament, and just go, cool, I want to take my awesome weapon that already exists with these really cool, interesting gameplay mechanics, and then tweak it and make it do what I want. And that's kind of like the general elevator pitch of like, what is our weapon? It's cool, sci-fi, slightly weird mechanics that then you can tweak and you can customize to be exactly kind of what you want.
And I think that's kind of why we joke about the Core 80 now, is because all of the work that we're doing behind the scenes, where we're kind of really finding the beauty in each faction and what that means for the actual weapon itself. We're kind of talking about, if we went back to the Core 80, like what would we do differently? There's a lot we would do differently, like expressing that weapon.
You kind of go everything. You kind of go, well, there's pretty much everything from the ground up we would want to change, because the Core 80 gives us that ability to look back and go, this kind of isn't where we want to go, right? Like we know that we can take that as a base and we can tweak it to push it more towards the direction that we want. But there's so much cool stuff that's been coming out of the explorations that we're just excited to get beyond that weapon.
Secret stuff that we're not going to show anybody yet. Well, maybe. Well, we're showing the VIPs. Right?
Yeah, we are showing the VIPs.
Yeah, they get the secret behind the scenes. Look at some of the stuff we're cooking up.
As much as I would love to talk about them, maybe we'll leave a little bit of a segment later on. Since we are cooking on the gun talk here. But it's really interesting to see. And I know, so we just go back then on the like adaptive weaponry. What was the idea behind this? Was it to because the way that I imagine it is you see that the Core 80 now has a bunch of these different chipsets that you can apply to it. Is this something that's going to be applied to all other weapons that we bring out? Is it like a base that we're trying to work off of? Is this why we don't have any other new weapons as of right now?
Yeah, well, it was like adaptive weaponry is the base. Every weapon that we add in, like we're working on this idea of faction variant weapons that are like spec class, very specific weapons that have like kind of a locked playstyle to them. There's still some area of adaptability, but there's like a mode on them which is like this is like a Caldari perfect class spec like DMR,
Mhm.
or, you know, an SMG or whatever, you know, hypothetically. So we have that idea that is something that we can show off a bit later at some point in development. But the kernel of the original idea was just that the problem that we wanted to solve, right, that Massey solved for us. The problem was people were already crying out for ways to customize their weapon. First strike, one weapon, had 2 firing modes. Already people were going, how am I going to customize this thing? We were like, well, what's a very EVE way of customizing this thing? And also, we're in early development right now. We can kind of, I'm not going to say do what we want, but we can kind of like really open the box up here, experiment really wide, and kind of create like content. And there was no real established meta. I know one came out, but there wasn't like a hard balance. It was kind of like, here's just a bunch of toys. Just go and have fun with them.
And that's a really important point. Like, we have the freedom to build a weapon system that doesn't have to be perfectly balanced, one weapon against the other, because of the nature of the game. And that's something that not a lot of shooters do. We didn't want to build a customization system that was very kind of hard in the way that it didn't let you do the things you wanted for the sake of balancing reasons, right? A lot of the customization systems you'll see in games are built a certain way to give the designers quite a lot of control and quite a lot of safety while still allowing the player to have a bit of customization and a bit of personalization. And we wanted to start everything completely from the other side. So let's just let players do what they want, and then we'll just react how that's working. So we're taking a kind of top-down approach where we go, yeah, do whatever you want, and then we'll just catch things that really aren't going to work. And blacklist and sort of, adjust things as we go. But for the most part, it'll be like, yeah, if you want to just go full in and do the equivalent of giving yourself 4, enhanced grips on your weapon, but just stack up to give you like 90% recoil control and go, well, screw everything else. Like, sure, why not? Why not? Like, we're not in a space where things have to be super pointed. So we started out the system by just going, have a bunch of slots where normally games would be saying, this is a magazine slot, this is your stock slot, whatever. We just go, open it up, and then we can let people do what they want. And as the game develops and adaptive weaponry evolves, we're going to introduce more interesting ways for players to have to kind of manage the changes that they're putting in. Right now, you can just stack up really powerful stuff, and there's not a lot of thought to it. It's just power climb. But we've got some really interesting ideas that are, much more kind of aligned of why it's an interesting, kind of mini game to like optimally tune your weapon. So we could start with what we have now. We can keep improving it but keeping that mindset of like, let the player do what they want.
I think it was really interesting, and we were quite lucky. And I think this goes to the grade of work that you did, Massey, was that it didn't really break. Like,
I'm amazed.
I know we kind of was like, here's everything, go and break it. Like, it didn't really break. Like, people did what we hoped they would do, is they were tuning to what they liked, how they liked to. There wasn't like, this is it, this is the broken thing, and everyone's just firing around.
Well, there was one broken.
Well, only one person really discovered it. It's like if you stacked. Oh, I'm revealing the secret sauce now. I think if you stacked the semi-auto chipset like 4 times, the thing became like a railgun.
Yeah. And that was never intended. The idea of letting people take those chipsets and then just apply loads of them is generally fine. And we're going, okay, when it's like triggers and automatic things, the idea is you would only need to apply one and then you're getting a bunch of positive effects. We're going, maybe that's the kind of thing that we need to just put a little bit of friction in the way of. But apart from that, it's like, we're only going to be catching those kinds of things. The idea is that there shouldn't be like bunch of arbitrary rules about what you can do. Only time you'll run into those things is where you go, well, this will obviously be broken if you don't do this.
And I think, like I say, only one person figured this out. And what I'm going to do is after this, I'm going to get you the image so you can add this on screen right now.
I've got it. I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah, there was like, if you look at the tier list of chipset combinations, like number 2 used like almost 800 deployments or something stupid like that. Maybe that's hyperbole, but like the second most used loadout was that one by one person. Who just, who just kept going, kept deploying. But I think like obviously they didn't share that, or we would see more people using it.
I think it was Dan. He actually found an interesting way to mine as well, that he left until the end of the actual playtest to let everyone know.
Was the wiggle?
Yeah, the wiggle. Yeah.
Hey, I use that all the time.
Yeah,
You go between two nodes and then you wiggle, and it doesn't reset your progress.
Okay.
Yeah. Which will absolutely be a mod that we allow you to do.
The wiggle.
With all of this, we're going, well, what you don't want to do is go, that's cool, let's remove that.
Yeah,
You've got to go, that's cool, let's make sure that that's not always there, but you can do it.
I think this is why I love this kind of like open development, just getting stuff out early. Like I remember when we first, not even before it went out, this has never been exemplified most of them. When we first showed footage of the mining laser, that March 2024.
The banana.
2024. When we showed the mining laser for the first time, one of the first comments I seen was like, that would make an amazing like target painter. Like, and I was like, okay, that's it. Like this is the community that we have, is they can't see a mining laser and go, oh cool. Their default thought is,
how do I break it?
Yeah, how do I break it?
How much damage does it
What can
do?
I use it for? Yeah, how can I hurt someone with it?
Yeah.
And it's brilliant. Like look at Egg.
Yeah.
All hail the mighty Egg.
Right. It's nice being indie where you can be like, yeah, let's have the egg.
Yeah, it's the Egg. It becomes,
Yeah. Make it its way in and out of the game multiple times.
Yeah, exactly.
We had
the egg next. The Easter egg.
We had so many things. That we just. It just seems like so long ago now, because it was so many different things as well, because you went from like First Strike, Carrion, Solstice, and then Groundbreak is just like 5 different maps. It was just like they had so many things to break. But I think everything was pretty well balanced. I think everyone actually had a really good time, and I think everything was very evenly competitive.
Well, come early access, there's going to be even more things to break. So keep breaking it, really.
Yeah, but
don't break it so much that it breaks the entire game. And the experience
but this is why we're approaching things the way that we are, right? It's like the idea of doing these regular playtests. We don't want the game to come out and then find something broken. We want to keep doing these tests leading up to any of the milestones that are kind of big major things publicly. We want people to be showing us where things don't work so that we can fix them, and not wait for us to preciously be going, oh, we think it's perfect now. It's like, no, it's broken, but have a look and tell me where it's broken, where I didn't realize that and then we can use that to improve things. So it's great for us as designers to not have to guess, right? Especially when you're looking at something like adaptive weaponry, the whole time I was looking at it, I don't know how this is, surely this doesn't work. Surely this is too open, and then you put it in front of people and you go, okay, well that bit's broken and that bit's broken, but the rest of it's fine. You go, awesome. We can just use that as a feedback loop and make the game better.
Yeah, so like when I speak to game developer friends, I always kind of tell them it's like communities are actually far more tolerant of like placeholder and prototypes. Like some of the stuff we've put out in the game is like held together with blue tack. Like it's like barely functional. But there's a far more tolerance for it. I think the laser rifle, the banana gun, was a perfect example. We weren't getting anyone go, oh, I don't like the look of that, because they knew clearly then that's not the feedback we need. If we wanted feedback on it, we actually try and put some effort into how the thing worked. The fact that it was so clearly placeholder, people were giving us the feedback that we needed. It didn't feel right. It felt good here, it didn't feel good there. And nobody was commenting on the rocks and how they looked. It was just their interaction with them. I think too many people fall into traps of like, well, everything has to look like it's finished. And then you end up getting people feeding back on the things that you don't really care about.
Yeah. And the community have been great about like kind of self-policing when things like that have come up. When someone has gone, why does it look like this? And people are like, well, obviously, like, it's not going to look like that. And like, we don't have to jump in and do that. Whereas if you took something that was sort of like halfway there, it would be way harder to get that message across, and people wouldn't be kind of fighting the corner in the way that they do. So we're very fortunate that our community, and I think you're right, like just gamers in general, are so much happier to see things and feel like they're kind of part of the process of fixing stuff before it has to come out and be broken. So we've just like seen that with all the playtests and going to fully embrace it moving forward, where we can just show people super work in progress stuff and get feedback, because there's no point being precious. It makes the product worse at the end of the day if you don't get that feedback early. So yeah, we're continue scouring the Discord, seeing what people. Yeah, it makes the game better. It really does.
It also really helps, like, from the art teams. Kind of lets us know, like, what players are liking most, what's more final, so then we can take that for our art paths. Whereas if stuff is very much still in progress, we don't need to rush and art that up. We can kind of go back and still create on it. Also committing kind of art resources to something which, is obviously very much.
And also, when you put something placeholder in front of people at that level, they just become idea. Right? They go, this is what it could be, and this is where it could go. And as a designer and as an artist, when you give someone a real shell of something and they go, I think it could look like this, and it could look like that, and it could look like this, it's like, that's way better than you giving them something that's like 60% of the way through. And then they go, maybe it should look like this. And you go, we're already, we already think it's going to be this way. It's like, just give them the banana gun and they go, what if it did this? What if it did that? And they go, awesome.
Well, it's worth shouting out, like, and calling out that creativity. Like, there are some people in our community right now that are like drawing that stuff up for us, like sketching stuff up, like doing blueprints. Like, I think it's awesome seeing that stuff, right? But you're right. We wouldn't be getting that level of creativity if we were very firmly just going, no, it looks like this. This is exactly how it's going to look. We get that kind of to and fro, which is awesome.
It's what Sakuel said to us as well when we was playing with him during his stream. He said, I like your approach. You're actually giving the players a tool, like the mining tool, and you're allowing them to use it and see if it's something that is going to be used in the game, so that you haven't wasted hours of work on an asset that could potentially never make it into the game, which I think he spoke very highly of it. The players definitely get it as well.
We love you, Sakuel. Thank you.
Sakuel.
It's way more fun to build a game that way as well. Like, I don't think people should be thinking of, other game companies, whatever, should be looking at it and thinking like, oh, but it's risky, and what do you lose? And it's like, you don't really lose anything. You really don't. Like, it's so much more fun to build a game with the community. It's also, as like professionals, you kind of get stuck in your ways of thinking about things. And when someone from the outside just comes up with an idea, you go, that's so far away from the kind of golden path that I wouldn't have been thinking about. Like, it's so helpful to have all of those voices in the room, that when I've worked on projects that are basically like closed, until you get right at the end. And for the team, I've worked on projects where I thought what we made was awful the whole way through as a designer, because this is what we do, right? Is we go, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. And I thought for about 2 years, I was so stressed. I was like, it's just not good enough. And then the game came out, and it reviewed pretty well, and people liked it. And I was like, why was I so stressed for so long? We were fortunate that happened. It's like, if we'd have put it in front of people regularly, you would have been able to see people don't like this, they don't like this, they don't like this, and you can stop that kind of anxiety being really intangible and unfixable, and just go, awesome, we'll fix that, and we won't worry about these other things.
It's actually really nice. Like, a lot of the feedback that we've got around the combat, and even from Sakuel, thank you, Sakuel. My boy, I've said that our combat feels really tight and really nice, and we're kind of sat here looking at it and we go, we know we've got a long list of things we know that can improve it, but like it's hard when you've got those dev blinkers on, right? You're kind of caught in that cycle of it's not good enough. But like, we've got a really solid base, and that's proved from people saying, like, the press, we regularly speak to people like VG247 and PC Gamer, and they're saying like the combat already, even in First Strike, got really tight, and it's really nice to know that we know how much better it can be, how much better it's gonna get. But people are already feeling there's a real solid base there. My favorite though, talking about player feedback, is I swear somebody is moonlighting as I can't remember the name, and I really wish I did. There was, in between Solstice and Groundbreak, before we added manufacturing, someone posted feedback being like, oh, hey, I really don't like that I lose my chipsets, so I thought of some ideas, and basically listed out, like, almost word for word our design for manufacturing, like blueprints and blueprint shards. And we're like, I remember going, who the hell is this guy? Where did he get access to our Confluence? Like, is he like...
It was quite annoying, because that was in the phase where we were sort of forming the idea and going, maybe you could do this and maybe you could do that. And then this guy kind of just said it, and we went, well, what am I doing here? What have I designed? Like, if it's just like, well, yeah, obviously you do that. And I was going, okay, no, but really it was like, cool. It's validated that, like, this is kind of,
if they're thinking, they're already thinking to the same problems. It's just so great to see the community also going, we're all trying to solve the same problems.
Yeah.
Which is really great. Now we're also trying to solve the problems you don't even know are problems yet. That's that's the secret spice in game development is we're trying to solve problems that you might think are problems 2 or 3 years down the line.
That are also not very interesting. A lot of game design work is like the stuff that isn't very interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
You leave the community, you go, what about this? This is cool. What about this? This is cool. And you go, cool. I can outsource a bunch of the cool stuff to you guys while I'm figuring out how to stop NPCs just walking into rocks.
Yeah. What would you rather solve right now is how we can evolve the manufacturing system, or not enough people are auto detecting their graphic settings.
What is the most fun part of the job when coming up with weapons? Is it the design? Is it the balancing? Is
well, for me, I just get to play them. So
yeah,
that's me. I get to have a very early idea with Massey when you're in your ideation phase and you're like, oh, I'm thinking about this and thinking about that, and I'm like, that's cool. Have you thought about this? And have we played this? Like, hey, I played this, or this is a good reference and stuff like that. And then I kind of like disappear into the shadows. Then Massey goes, I've made something, and then I come and get to play it. So
There's 2 parts that are the best, right? There's right at the start before anyone has invalidated any of your ideas because they sound really cool on paper. And then there's a big dip where you start building it and you go, sometimes people get it straight away and they go, oh, that's pretty cool. Most of the time you go, this doesn't work and that doesn't work and this feels weird. And then eventually you start to cross a point where people start having fun with it, and that feels great. But then you get this period where like people start to get used to it and they don't really kind of notice the changes. And then you bring in someone new, or you do a public test where people see it for the first time after it's had some iteration, and people get that first kill and they go, whoa, that's the best feeling. That reaction of that first kill going, like that just kind of so unfiltered response of just, weapons are so much fun, right?
Yeah.
In first person shooters, it's like ultimately like people want to have fun shooting the weapon. You can get that spot. You can, the exact moment where his heart breaks in half, that moment where someone notices something, you can picture it and you go, okay, we've done some good stuff here through iterating. And you don't get that like boiled frogs thing that you can get in development where you just don't see how cool something is until you put it in front of someone for the first time. So I'm really excited to be working on, what will ultimately be a live service product where we're able to kind of introduce a bunch of these new things. And the way that we're approaching it isn't just like, here, have 20 rifles that are all slightly tuned differently. Be able to go, bang, like here's a big impact thing and here's a big impact thing, and just seeing what people do with that.
I think for me, like when we're talking about the weapons and what it means for faction weapons, the beauty and uniqueness of faction, it's when we're talking about what could this gun do, what this gun does, it's like, oh, that makes more sense for that faction. So when we're talking about the foundation of creating these weapons, or the weapons that relate to the or connect to the factions, and are really separating them so they have their own space. Eventually, when we've got like a big roster of weapons, they don't sort of just merge into sort of, yes, they have their function, kind of aesthetics. Even how, I don't know, each weapon would be, or it reloads or audio signature, and separating all of that, I think, is super fun. The more we're talking about it, the more we're just kind of finding, that's what Galante means. That's what Mar means.
When you see like other games that, especially those that don't get to lean into the sci-fi in the way that we do, there's an innate kind of homogeneity to the weapon roster. Whereas
word one.
Because, thank you. I had to think about how to say it.
But it flowed. It just flowed, man. That was good. In fact, I
pointing it out.
I would have we talk about the next quick thing, right? I would have just completely fumbled that. Sorry, I'm doing your
But like,
you want to say it again?
No. It's good. We carry on. Because the so few games get to kind of break their game in half. And it's like, for us, we've got so many like different empires and so many subsidiaries of those empires that we such significantly different aesthetics and gameplay, and we're really going to lean into that stuff. We're trying to use the vastness of New Eden to be able to significantly different, weapons that you might be able to look at like 2 or 3 or 4, versions of the game, and it look like a different game. One of them is looking like pretty military, and another one is like super out there and barely even looks like a gun or a weapon anymore. Like we can really kind of push those things to the side. And when we've been talking about it, I think it started as like, these weapons are kind of similar, but one's a bit red and one's a bit green. And as we talked about it more, we're going, okay, well, that's further apart because they reload differently.
We talked about player feedback. We was talking about, I think you was talking about, someone was talking about the manufacturing that, it literally looked like perfectly almost one-to-one replica of what we was already creating indoors. But the other thing was the VIPs. They've had their hands on the new weapons now.
They have.
They have
Well, weapon prototypes. We should
prototypes.
say.
Okay.
We haven't made.
Yeah,
we haven't
yeah.
like fully finished weapons. We're still
Of course.
prototyping.
We just told them to focus on one weapon over the weekend. They completely ignored us and focused on another one.
Good.
Which is kind of what we expect from the players. Yeah, literally standard. You give them something, they use it for a completely different reason.
Yeah.
If anyone does want to participate in the VIP internal playtests, you can do so by going to the community hub. You can find this on Discord. It is community.vanguard.hub, I believe it is. I will double check and maybe we'll put it in the description of the video. But if anyone wants to join the VIP group, please sign up to that, have a look. There's a player survey completed. Complete a couple of other missions, and then we'll be approving people very soon.
You totally should. Like, it's awesome. Get to play some of the stuff we're cooking really early on.
It's extremely valuable.
Give us feedback.
Mhm.
You get to. It's quite funny because I know you do show and tells with the VIPs every now and then, and we get to see those show and tells back, and it's quite funny. There's like a video that CCP Principal, our lead designer's made, where it's like there's a couple of things happening in the video, and there's obviously clearly one thing that everyone who's watching is like, no, go back to that. Like, and then obviously they're watching a pre-recorded video already, but it's just generally quite funny. Like we a lot of the content that we produce, that we show internally, we just also show to the VIPs. So,
Yeah. And we've started rolling that out to the founders now as well, on Discord and on social.
Time.
Yes. So we have started rolling some of that stuff out.
I'm going to kind of cue you up here really, because like the differences between the factions and the characteristics are really starting to bleed into the design. Right?
Absolutely. I think when we're talking about the different factions, it's what does that really mean for the weapon? And we've spoken a lot about, the technologies that then kind of leads on the audio and how that kind of changed as well. But like I was saying before, like what does it mean how does Galante reload their weapon? How is that different to what does that tell about the faction and their relationship with the weapon? Is it a faction that kind of respects the weapon and protects their enemy, or is it something that is like, you're just kind of revving up or clunking and you're just kind of, hate your enemy, so you just kind of spray and like, all of these differences really interesting. Yeah, the more we talk about it, the more that we're having this identity, and that's just growing and growing. And over time, when a player picks up a weapon, immediately just from like where they will know exactly what faction weapon comes from and what roughly it's going to sound like, what it's going to do.
Yeah, and it will be really interesting, like moving forward, like how we integrate like the weapons that players are using and the kit that they're taking in, and how important that the factions that they're kind of aligned towards in the meta, right? Like I really like the idea that if we have these audio signatures that are so different, that when you hear a sniper whiz by go past you, you know so much about that person immediately, because you're like, oh, that was an Amar projectile, therefore this means this in the context of this, and you're like, oh right. Like you might hear a warning shot, like say you're aligned more with some sort of Caldari subsidiary, and then you hear a Caldari bullet go past you and you go, what the hell, man? Like, and it's not because of like your team alignment or anything, because this stuff is going to be quite soft, but you're already building such a, conversation with the other person, and that will tie into a lot of these, underlying ideas of like the fragile alliances and how you're breaking your alliances to complete certain contracts, but in the overall grand scheme of things, like you're trying to do this for this faction. So when we have weapons that can tell you so much about player, I think that's going to be super interesting for our PvP interaction.
Oh yeah, I think it can tell you so much about the meta and the person as well. Like some of the ideas, one of the ideas that we want to do to expand the meta is this much larger idea of territories in space, right?
Yeah.
There is, like in New Eden, there are different territories that have different kind of factions and corporations that kind of feel like they're the ownership of that part. Is we can also play into those metas, right? Like being shot by an Amar weapon in Caldari space might be really different, because in Caldari space there is kind of a meta. The resources of those territories mean that ammo of that type is actually quite hard to get, and it's like if that person is not wasting, but they're choosing to spend precious ammo that in this territory is really hard to get hold of, then they're either extremely rich or they're just really reckless.
Or they're doing something really important.
Yeah.
Like, I'm either going to go help that guy or I'm going to ruin their time.
Yeah.
And it's one of the beauties of like, that I really enjoy designing a shooter within the context of EVE, is this idea that it's like, people are supposed to be assholes. And like most of the time when you're building a shooter, you're going, well, the teams don't like each other, but everything has to kind of be fair, whatever. Whereas in the context of this, it's like screw each other over at any moment, and it's so nice to be able to have that freedom of going, there's so much more deeper meaning to the reasons that players are engaging with each other and the consequences of doing that in the first place than just, oh, I shot you and then the score goes up. Like, every time I kill a guy who's clearly aligned towards Amar in Amar space, you're going, what have I called? You just see a bunch of drop ships coming in. Oh, crap.
And like we talk about these contexts because we've been talking about a lot, but like, they might not be tangible in the experience right now, but don't worry. Like a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, reputation and territories and all of these things, this isn't lip service. These are things that we're baking into the experience and things that even not some of it's on paper at the moment will be playable in time to come.
It's a consequence of the way that we're trying to build the game by showing people stuff super early. It's like we don't have a bunch of these systems built already. Like if normally when you're hearing from developers and stuff, they're kind of just talking about what they have and where they might be going in the next like 6 months. The reason that we're talking about stuff that's like however long down the line that we don't have immediate examples of is because there will be amount of like, sure, you can design whatever game you want if you can't put your money where your mouth is. But it's like, no, we fully intend to deliver all of this stuff. It's just we have to build a bit at a time.
And it's kind of you kind of only get this at CCP because it's long-term thinking over short-term thinking. When CCP have, as you'd expect, got the mindset of a company that have been building a game for 20 years. Right. Is that they don't, I've worked at companies before where you're thinking about, next year. CCP thinking decades, right? We are now in the third decade.
EVE forever.
EVE forever, and we are in the third decade, right? And we're thinking in that mindset. Vanguard, we're some ways yet from thinking about that, but like the experience that we're starting to cook up and we're starting to dream about, right, is not something that we're like, let's put that on the 6-month roadmap and then let's build it. It's several milestones down the road, several years down the road, and I think by the time we're through early access and coming out to the end of it, we hope that like that part of the experience is really there, and it's.
How boring would it be to just have like 2 or 3 years behind closed, just coming up with the stuff that makes sense for what it is that we're doing in the next low-hanging piece, and not hearing all of the ideas that are coming from the, every single time we hear something, you're sort of going, okay, well, how do we now pivot towards that cool idea? Because that's definitely where we should be going. Because we've got a bit of room in front of us, we haven't made a bunch of these already where we can't turn and implement a bunch of that feedback. So, this is sounding a bit sort of self-indulgent or whatever, but the point is like, join the VIP program and like get involved with giving us feedback, because there's so much room to shape how this game is going to change. And I've been on projects before where it's complete lip service. We're making the game with gamers and really you're just doing everything behind closed doors. Have a Discord channel. But it's like the whole point of this is going, there's so much that this game could be. We want to hear from people as like, which of those routes do we actually want to take so that we can build the game that people want to play.
And that hit me like the hardest at FanFest when we announced.
I'm really excited.
I'm
going this year.
I know. Massey's coming to FanFest this year. So it was like the first year that when we announced it there, it was like straight after we announced, because it was quite funny, like the couple of days before we announced it, like you couldn't really tell anyone why we were there. Like people were cottoning on, like there's a lot of people from the London studio here. Like there was like an old article from like 2020 something. The CCP London studio were maybe working on an FPS title. So like they were like, why are you guys here? And we're like, we're just, we're here for the show, And then we finally got to reveal the game. It's like afterwards, so many people coming up to me. It was like a huge moment of like, this is it. This is who we're making the game. Worked in that way so many years on so many different titles, behind closed doors. Think you're making a game. You think you know who you're making it for. Really, you're just making it for yourselves, or you're acting the game. Then you release it out and everyone's like, I don't really want it. Like, but we thought you did.
Yeah.
But like, it was like the moment, like FanFest was like showing them a build that was really that early. Like, I think we talked about this before, but like what most people saw at FanFest, apart from a lot of the environment work, which was kind of leaning into that, a lot of the gameplay stuff was only like 6 months old.
I mean, it's crazy. Like, you don't see it behind closed doors of like how much of that game had just been made. How much of what we showed was just over the line. Like, it's and it's going to be amazing. Like going to FanFest and speaking to people and getting all of that kind of feedback firsthand of the stuff that people do want to see of the game. And I've, to be honest, like I've been here for a couple of years now, and I didn't get to go to FanFest last time, and it was a little bit of a relief because I was like, I don't know if I'm ready to hear all these opinions or figuring out what's going on. But like now we're at the point where the ideas are starting to shape up, and we've had a bunch of that feedback from the Discord. And like, I can't wait to go there and just like fill notepads with just like what people are telling me of what they think the game is going to be. So I'm like, I don't know, this game could be enormous. Like, it doesn't really matter what I think it should be. It needs to be 100 different people's opinions that are like fully embedded in what New Eden is, and take it from there. So I'm going to be exhausted by the end of
it's going to be amazing though. Like I had someone that first FanFest to close off my anecdote, so to speak, is I had someone come up to me the day after we announced Vanguard, and they said, "Oh, I've been playing EVE since it came out. This feels like year zero. Like getting on at the ground floor with you guys, making this game and building it with you. It's like."
But that's also like what we want it to be for a lot of the people. We keep using that term like EVE curious, which off every time. They're looking from the outside at EVE of going like, I don't know how to get involved with this because the spaceship game is just not really my kind of thing. And I'd always wanted to kind of get that FPS aspect. I wasn't aware of Dust when it was out. And now getting the opportunity to sort of shape being like, I want to be a part of the articles that come out about the super expensive wars, knowing that I had an impact on that kind of stuff. So it's going to be super exciting. Like getting to just build the game out and deliver on what people think the shooter in New Eden needs to be. Because there's been a bunch of attempts, and we're learning from it every time. But there's an amount of changing that happens in that time, and we get the chance to really kind of do it from day zero and have this be year zero of New Eden for a whole swathe of new people, as well as the people that are already fully invested in it. Yeah, I look forward to when people ask me, like, when I say, I work. They're like, anything that I've heard of? And I'm like, a couple of things in my history, but like right now I'm like, you've heard of EVE? And some people are like, and some people aren't. And I'm looking forward to that kind of moving into the shooter space, where there is lots of people that. And you kind of be like, you bang out and be like, is that the thing with all the $1 million, battles? And I'm like, you can actually get involved with it now. I just,
It's going to be like, so it's going to be over a year since we last showcased it at FanFest. So I think there's going to be a lot of people asking. I think there's going to be a lot of people asking, is this still an extraction shooter? And I think it wouldn't be fair for us to have a title of a podcast episode saying weapons and combat if we don't talk about the actual combat and the gameplay mode. But how do we change this around? How do we pave our way into this MMO FPS genre now?
Well, I think that's like the challenge, and honestly, it's been a journey for us being confident enough to talk about this, right? Like we're not going to be blind to it or naive to it. The first strike, it was an extraction shooter, right? We wanted a grounding for the shooting and the first person and the atmosphere. That was like the main validation. Like first strike, the feedback that we really care about is the shooting tight, and does it feel like it's in New Eden? That was like the main thing. Like, does it feel like hell? Right. And I think from that point on, we were like building on that. We always knew, and we always taught like, hey, this is going to be more than an extraction shooter, because we already knew at that time the vision that we wanted to build to. And that vision has, solidified over these last 18 months in a way I couldn't have even imagined as well. Mostly thanks to the community being able to chip in, right? I don't think our vision would be anywhere near where it is if it wasn't for the input, the community kind of poking us and driving us to keep pushing ourselves. But yes, we started out with an extraction shooter, but it was never like we're making an extraction shooter. It was just kind of like we're making a sandbox that is expansive, that will keep expanding. Sure, it has an extraction mechanic, but for every release, I felt like we've always gone, well, it's less like an extraction shooter. It's less like an extraction shooter. There's only really around Groundbreak for some of the ideas about the expansive universe, the way that adaptive weaponry and manufacturing working, which was very different than any extraction shooter on the market, where we were now going, no, now we feel confident saying like where we're going is an MMO FPS. And I think at FanFest this year, we're going to be talking a lot more about the longer term vision of the game. We're going to be telling you about the game that you're going to be playing in early access, and then in early access, plus 1 or 2 years, right? The game that we're already starting to build out. And I know we've kind of scratched on some of the things, our own metas and territories and stuff like that, but like we are, and I think we can be bold. It sounds like bravado, but we are really driven by this. We really want to kind of redefine what people think of the MMO.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of games. If I asked anyone here, like, hey, what's the first MMO FPS that comes to mind? There's a few games that come to people's minds, but I think some of them are just big FPSs.
Yeah.
They're not MMO FPSs. They're just big FPSs.
Mm-hmm.
We really do want to make an MMO FPS. We're looking at games like EVE. God, I've been sat in meetings where we're looking at MMORPGs and how people interact in those games and how people progress through those games. Right? We're looking at those experiences in ways that how we build out the meta. I think on the ground, you will have a gun in your hand. You will be shooting things. But the meta that surrounds that, the space that you exhibit and the progression that you go on, like we want to have the whole universe of New Eden accessible in some way, but you can't just, click and I'm over there, click and I'm over there. Through early access and out of early access is really starting to build Vanguard as a true MMO FPS and not a big FPS.
Yeah. And it takes a big jump to kind of go from where we are now and introducing something massively different to kind of push it over that edge, because like ultimately like the extraction shooter thing is kind of going to sit there for a little bit longer, while the core gameplay loop and the moment to moment stuff is going to feel a bit extraction shootery for a little while, right? And I think that's normal and that's fine, because there's elements of what we're trying to do where it makes sense. But the way that I've been kind of thinking about it, and I've had to keep repeating this to myself, because I've had the same thoughts with the community of going, has this new extraction shooter, even this new thing kind of feels like it's there. It's like, how would you describe one of those like shooters that came out in like the year 2000 that have a single player campaign and a multiplayer component and like these, thinking like Modern Warfare 2 had like the Spec Ops missions that were like co-op designed, and it's like they weren't a battle royale shooter and they weren't an extraction shooter and they weren't a whatever. We pin all of this stuff on like a specific game mode as to what the game is. Now, when I'm thinking of the combat specifically, I can't talk to everything. I'm thinking about building a shooter, and then that shooter can be put in the context of, PvP deathmatch.
Yep.
Extraction shooter stuff. It can be put in the context of, a firefight or a horde mode or whatever. We're not building for a specific game mode. It's just that's kind of the vector that people have seen so far. But the idea is like by the time this is in a place where it's a bit more 1.0, you'll be seeing that the game follows the different vectors. And that's why we introduced the insurgency mode, where it's like, oh, it's just 9v9 PvP. And you're going, okay. So sometimes
that's not an extraction.
So sometimes it's an extraction shooter, and sometimes it's just a PvP shooter. And it's like, that's what the game will be. Is it sometimes it's this, sometimes it's that, sometimes it's this. And those, different ways that you can experience the game will grow over time.
I think what's exciting for us is also that we kind of, sometimes I completely forget that we're still such a small team. Like we are an indie studio making an MMO FPS. Like it's crazy. Like some people just say like, no, that's impossible. But I love the challenge of just kind of, taking on, the world of what this thing could be with, keeping it sort of personal and kind of growing it from there.
Yeah, I think I think the term I have to be careful when I say this because the term is loaded, but we are really making a platform for FPS experiences, right? We're not going after, hey, we're making Roblox in space. Yeah. No, we're not doing that. That is definitely a platform. But we're making a platform for different shooter experiences. At the core of that will be this sandbox that does have elements of having to deploy, having to extract. And that's not just yourself, right? That's one of the things we want to build. Wealth is also part of that. Deploying with wealth and extracting with wealth is an important part of that journey. But around the edge of that is, PvP, all of these different experiences that we want to express in the kind of, the pastiche of what Vanguard's going to be. See, I can use words too. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't even know what that means. You blow my mind.
I think it's like a panache, or something. Okay. I really hope I haven't used the word pastiche.
It's actually a pastry.
Yeah. But that's kind of the ambition that we have here, right? And I think that was one of the things. It was quite hard, and we were quite shy to talk up the ambition when we were showcasing stuff in First Strike, because the scope on what we wanted to validate was so small. We weren't talking a lot about vision at that point. We were talking kind of quite hazily about the direction that we wanted to move in. But like this FanFest is almost perfectly timed for us to talk more specifically, more boldly about the vision of this game and what it's going to look like in the next kind of couple of years. And that will include people shooting each other or shooting other things in lots of different ways. But what's going to drive the MMO aspect of it is how people connect, how people fight, and the progression through their experience is going to be a big.
All right, well, that pretty much wraps up our first episode. I thought you... I thought you all enjoyed. I can't tell if you're booing me or if you're
Booing each other.
Yeah, just boo.
I was saying boo, man.
But yes, if you're not already, jump in the Discord. This is where we're sharing a lot of the stuff with the founders. A lot of stuff that we've talked about today will be shared in Discord. And again, the VIP group, try and sign up because we definitely want your boots on the ground and giving us that amazing feedback. The next episode will be out next month. Stay tuned for what that could hold. We'll again probably announce it with the founders. But thank you all for joining me on our first episode. I hope you all had a good time, even though it's a little bit late in the day. But
That's perfectly fine.
Hopefully we'll speak again soon.
Thank you.
Cheers.
All right, cheers.
Thanks. All the best.
Bye.
Bye.